Hello, I'm Mike Jones with FCSI's Foodservice Consultant Magazine. Welcome to FoodSpace headquarters here in beautiful Boise, Idaho, during the Paz and Paella event. We're here at this particular episode, which is supported by Unox and is focusing on no less a topic than the kitchen of the future. And to do that, I'm delighted to be joined by three leading voices in this sector. So let me ask them to introduce themselves and we get underway. Joe, let's start with you first, please.
Thanks, Mike. Joe Schumaker. I'm the founder of FoodSpace. We're here in my test kitchen in Boise and excited to be here. Thanks so much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for hosting. And
Thanks, Mike. I'm Mathew, Gendreau, regional chef for Eurest.
Wonderful. Thank you, Matt. And Gene.
My name's Doerr. I'm responsible for consultant services for Unox in the United States. If you don't know Unox, we're the manufacturers of innovative combi ovens, speed ovens, and service temperature food preservation systems.
Wonderful.
Say that one 10 times.
As a mouthful.
Thank you, Gene. And thank you so much for your support today with this episode. Chef Matt, let's start with you first. Can you talk about, maybe set the scene here, and let us know about some of the key challenges that operators are currently experiencing in the back of house. What are some of the primary issues that kitchens are facing right now?
Well, right now, what we are seeing and what I notice nowadays is staffing, right? It's one of the big things that I see that are coming through. The people that are applying and the skill level that they actually have, right? The age group that are actually applying, there's a huge gap, right? The skill level, one, they don't have technique. And then I'm also seeing a lot of elderly that are actually applying, which is kind of difficult. So that's where we find that disconnect of having to spend a lot of time and effort to train and spend a lot of time and effort onboarding, which costs a lot of money. And it's tough to get that aspect and it kind of slows things down if that makes sense.
It does, absolutely. Joe, let's get your view on that as the consultant here. What do you think are driving those particular trends? What are driving those particular impacts? And also, what are the knock-on effects onto the sector that you're seeing from your point of view?
Yeah, totally. Well, we've had this conversation so many times. I mean, it's one of those things where we're in this weird epicenter of almost 5 generations. So 4 currently, we're close to having 5 generations of people in the workforce. So that's one thing. Mm-hmm. The second thing is, and we're seeing the same thing across the other sectors. When you look at, it's really hard to get people to pick strawberries anymore. Yeah. Right. In the U.S., it's just tough. And so I think we're seeing the same thing in the food service industry, right? We've got the young kids in high school that want to work in fast food jobs and get their first job, but that's not going to be their career. And so getting people to actually come into the food service industry and stay is extremely hard. And so I actually think that's an opportunity where if we get people excited about the technology, excited about the fact that we can blend flavor and guest experience and hospitality, if we can do that better, then maybe we can get people to stick around. The problem is that and it's not Gen Z yet. We don't know yet what Gen Z is going to do in the food service industry, but we know millennials did not stay. We know that because there's a shortage of management folks that would have been millennials that would have started in the industry and stayed. And so I think we're going to see the next decade is going to continue with some of these challenges.
There's a lot of challenges and a lot of change coming. Gene, Joe mentioned there about getting operators excited by technology. Can you talk about how you guys are staying close to the operators and how they're keeping abreast of those particular challenges and how that all feeds into the R&D process perhaps and ultimately into new products that you're producing?
Sure. I mean, so the simple answer is people, right? In today's world, we think that everything's done from afar, that we don't need the person-to-person communications, and that's absolutely not true. We spend a lot of time and effort. In 2008, we introduced into our sales process what we call the AMC. It's the Active Marketing Chef. This is an Unox salesperson that complements our manufacturer's representative and our dealer network, and they're out on the road in an Unox van, taking an oven with them that's specially configured so that they can plug it in any kitchen, work with the operator, cooking their food in their place, and get that feedback. Yeah. We also have our key account managers and our segment leaders that are out working with multi-unit operators and finding out what they need. We of course attend all the different trade shows, the small conferences like NACUFS and the SHFM, which brings a lot of information to us. And they're all feeding that information back to our engineering team. You mentioned, or you asked, how does that like influence the process? Well, as we're constantly getting that information, and sometimes we'll have certain operators that'll have a particular challenge, and we'll bring our R&D team into the US, and they'll work directly with that. And all of that goes back to our scientists, our engineers, our chefs, and they can develop new innovations. I think about two different things that we've done recently where we took technology that was maybe in a previous product that we had, like what we call adaptive cooking. Adaptive cooking allows you to put multiple different products into the oven at different times. Right. And as cold air is being introduced in the oven, the load size is changing, it automatically adapts to that. Well, when we thought about going into the speed oven category, we said, what is one of the biggest problems? And for a lot of operators, they can only put one item in at a time. With adaptive cooking, you can put multiple items in at the same time, or even you put an item in, 20 seconds later, you put another item in. The second example would be the Everio. If we look at holding today, in most cases, it's at best a process that when we start the holding process, over the next 2 hours, the food just degrades. And I think you can probably agree to that, right?
Absolutely.
So we looked specifically for technologies that would allow us to take standard holding and say an open container and hold for 6 hours, 8 hours, and still get really good quality. Or furthermore, then we developed a process that allows us to take food out of the oven, either directly in a hotel pan, and vacuum seal it, and we can get 2 to 3 days of a premium product and holding them that way. And that's what it does.
Yeah. So we're hearing some great solutions here. A question for all of you, I guess, in quick succession, if you could answer this. Do these challenges that the industry is experiencing right now, do they feel unprecedented? How surmountable do you feel they are with solutions like Gene is talking about and others out there? Is this kind of change that we're experiencing, is it seismic, or is it something that actually we just need to meet head on? Joe, what's your view on that?
It is truly a macro trend, but it's a reset because pre-COVID, we were already experiencing some of this. COVID paused us, and then now we're resetting again.
How about you, Matt? Do you concur with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes to the fact that, like what we discussed previously, the staffing issue is, as chefs, it takes so much time and effort and money and assets to onboard people and train that when we go to these trade shows, as a chef, it's like consistency is always that one key thing to always have the customer always coming back, right? And with inflation and product cost always going up, and you don't know if your produce and stuff is always going to be there when it shows up, or if it's going to be rotten, or if you can even use it, right? So the new technology out there that we keep looking for, plug and play, push a button, and then we can get anybody these, and recipes are set, and it's turning out to be that's the trend that we see going through.
Yeah. Great answer. Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Gene, do you think we're keeping up with the rate of change?
Yeah, I mean, change is inevitable, right? And like Joe said, we made it through COVID. As people tend to think that some of the current problems are so massive that we'll never be able to overcome. But companies, people, societies, that's what we overcome things. That's what we do. And it's just a matter of time and we figure it out.
Yeah, we adapt, right? Yeah. That's what we're good at. Matt, on that front, you talked about the whole labor issue. Do you feel like that there is sufficient labor-saving equipment on the market able to answer these needs? We've heard from some of the solutions that Gene was talking about. Is it sufficient? Is it answering this labor crisis?
Oh, absolutely. When it comes down to high efficiency, say like automatic fryers, right? You're saving money on they filter themselves, right? The usage of oil, right? They filter themselves. You can get it expands the life of oils, right? Machines are now using less water, right? Less energy. And now more and more clients are going to sustainability, and that's what they want, so everything uses less power, which is great, and carbon fiber footprint is now becoming a major part of our industry.
Yeah.
Can I add on? I think this is where the collaboration piece between operators, consultants, manufacturers, that's why I think that's the thing is we've been in a lot of ways over the last couple decades, we've been disjointed.
Yes.
Right. We've been operating in silos. And so I think to solve some of these issues, we have to collaborate, because the customers aren't going to spend the money on this equipment unless they've got a unified voice between us explaining why it's the right investment for them. And the operators play a critical role in that conversation, because the reality is a consultant's going to design the space. And, even if we do, FoodSpace does mass consulting as well, MES consulting. But the reality is not all of our clients are hiring us for that product, right? We're doing design and then we're out. And then Matt and his team and all of the other operators out there, they have to then live in that space. The problem is, if we're not communicating and I'm not getting feedback on my design or my spec, and if we're not going together to the client and saying, these are some of the things that would save money, that would save labor, that would create an ongoing, more sustainable food program for you, then they're not going to let us put in that more expensive equipment, because typically this equipment does cost money up front. We have to invest in capital to save on OpEx. I would say most of this equipment we're talking about, when we do our ROI calculations, it's got to be 3 years or less. It's got to be a 3-year labor savings ROI or less.
It's an investment.
It is.
Yep.
But some of the good stuff, that ROI is even shorter.
Yeah.
That's when we can really sell it. Because if he has to hire 2 less people, what does that translate into by the time you figure cost of labor, overhead? And it's not that we're giving a different or lower quality product to the guest. It's that we're making him more efficient and his team more efficient, and he's already struggling to find the labor anyway.
Right.
So we've actually checked all of the boxes when we think that way.
Lots of things to juggle here, Gene. And we started off talking about the whole labor piece, but as Matt was saying, you've also got to factor in energy usage, sustainability, connectivity. What are the guiding principles that you guys are using when you're looking at innovating new products? And how do you manage all of that into one package? How do you tick all of those boxes with your equipment?
Well, I mean, of course, as we just talked about, labor savings is a given. It's somewhere in the neighborhood in the U.S. of 50% of all food dollars spent by U.S. consumers is in restaurants. And labor costs more. The services that you need to operate your business cost more. Food costs more. And the consumer can't just take on all of that additional cost. We have to find ways to save labor. And that's through these innovative products. But we also look at what things we can do, and connectivity is probably a given that every manufacturer needs to have in their equipment today. I mean, for the last 10 years, you could go into a computer that was connected to your unit and be able to see what HACCP data was on there. You've been able to take a multi-unit operator could build programs in an offsite location and send them to the individual pieces of equipment. Well, now with the data transfer speeds and clouds and the being able to hold things in the cloud, you can hold so much data in the cloud and not have to have it on the equipment. And that, it's going to really, we think the future is going to be the digitization of food.
Yeah.
And taking all of that knowledge and holding it in the
cloud. And
of
the whole kitchen.
Yes.
And so I guess to Gene's point, Matt, great new products, great new innovation coming in to help solve these problems. But what impact does that have on training up the employees in the kitchen and the back of house? How do you manage that whole training piece as an operator so that they're aware of the benefits of this new equipment, that this innovation isn't going to waste? How do you keep on top of that training aspect as well?
It's doing things like these.
Yeah.
Staying connected with these guys and going to the trade shows and always looking and staying ahead of trends, and the biggest thing is us as chefs going out to these guys and saying, this is what we're seeing. Here's our issues. How can you help us? And that's the biggest thing, us going out to them and showing, here's what we're seeing. How can you help us moving forward? That's the only way it's going to work.
Absolutely. And I guess to get your point of view on that as well, Gene, so how does it work the other way around? How do you help operators? How do you work with the consultants to just make sure that whole training piece is as good as it possibly can be?
Well, obviously, as many person-to-person events like this as we can do, but also it's into the design of our sales process and actually our equipment as well. For years, since probably 2008, 2010, we've been doing what we call top training. And that's where after a piece of equipment is sold in, we send one of our chefs that knows how to operate the equipment and works directly with the people. As innovation and technology has advanced, we've brought that into an app where you can do it directly from your phone, as well as get the in-person training. And with our latest operating system, digital ID is what we call it, you can actually get training directly through the oven in the control panel. And as an added service, as you're cooking, you can get a concierge service where you can get culinary support at any time directly from the oven.
Very cool. Joe, what's the consultant's role with regards to training? What sort of participation? How do you guys keep on top of the training aspects as well?
Well, you're sitting in one answer to that, which is this test kitchen. I mean, I think, look, the reality is this: trade shows, sales trainings are great, but they don't really educate you on the equipment. So, you know, I think what it takes is effort. And I think that's the part where, you know, what we're trying to do as consultants is make sure that we've thought about it from the beginning. Yeah. We've remembered the only moment that matters is actually that plate of food. None of the rest of us exists without that plate of food moment. We remember that. That's at the forefront of everything that we do. And then we remember we have to educate people along the way, but that means we have to be ferocious learners, right? We have to start that. We're the first domino in that conversation in a lot of cases. And so it's on us to make sure we're specifying product because we've actually cooked in it. Sure. We've worked with chefs that have actually cooked in it and they validated. Yeah. Because again, I can go to a sales meeting, I can go to a trade show and I can touch the equipment, I can see it. But what's happening? I'm being told all the reasons why this piece of equipment is better than that piece of equipment. I'm getting sold on features, advantages, and benefits. And I'm having to make a specification decision based on somebody's word. So Gene's right, it's a people business, but it's also these companies being able to put their money where their mouth is and actually let us play with them and let us test them. And that's why we invested in the test kitchen, because I think it's FoodSpace's responsibility, my team's responsibility to educate ourselves. Yep. And then when we specify, we got to take it all the way. I tell my team all the time, we have to run it all the way to the ground, meaning after the piece of equipment is installed, we need to make sure that the manufacturers are doing the trainings with the chef in the site, with the operators, post-install. Permitted project, completely done. Punch walk is over. And guess what still has to happen? We have to make sure the frontline team gets the proper training and they have the phone numbers and the contact and the support for the manufacturers that are doing that support. And we do change our spec sometimes based on that after install support. Last comment on this, the service aspect of this, which we haven't really talked about, that's another piece to this puzzle and something that I do believe starts with the consultant. We have to understand what is the service makeup in that region. Yeah. I mean, I've done projects in 27 states. We got to go figure out, like, in this state, can this thing be supported properly, both from a training standpoint and a repair and maintenance standpoint? So there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle. And if we quarterback all of those properly, we get a win. If we miss a little detail or we don't have the right collaboration between all the players, that's when things fall.
Absolutely. And as you said, it's that maintaining being a ferocious learner throughout the entire process.
The whole time.
But as you said, Joe, this process starts with the plate of food. So how are you guys as design consultants, how are you fundamentally designing kitchens differently now? How are you designing kitchens of the future?
Well, when I first started, I came from the operator side, right? So when I first started, I'm sitting with architects and they're like, all right, where am I putting the whatever, steam table, whatever it is? Where am I putting the oven? Where am I putting the cook line? Well, I don't know. What's the menu? That was always my very first question, always from the beginning. And they would look at me cross-eyed. Like, no consultants ever asked me that before. I'm like, what? How is that even possible? We have to start with the food. So what that means is we have to take a step back. We can't just start drawing lines on paper. That's not our first role. Our first role is to do visioning and programming and understanding what the operator is going to be doing. Do they have an operator? Yeah. So it's that, I think that is the piece that I think a lot of people don't understand is the prep. You know, I use the sports analogy a lot. We have to practice like we play. We have to prep. Yep. It's all in the preparation. And so if we think that way, then what are we doing? We're meeting with operators early in the process. We're talking about the menu early in the process. And then we're designing based on a menu and a guest experience, not based on, well, we only have 10 feet for hood, so what can we cram in there? And I think that's the difference. And part of that, lastly, for us, we don't take a high volume of projects sometimes. We'll turn projects away if we can't give them that level of detail.
Yeah.
If folks
because you want to be hands-on.
100%. If somebody wants us to just draw lines for them in Revit, we're probably not the right fit for them. And that's okay.
Let's get your view on that, Matt. Describe that kind of interaction with a consultant like Joe. Why is it so useful from your perspective to have those conversations with the consultant very early in the process, to involve the consultant, keep that collaborative kind of relationship going throughout a project?
Well, just by working with Joe, I've learned that as culinarians, as the times have changed, and I've learned that we also need to change too in the culinary industry, that things are moving this way, and just the efficiencies and the way the kitchens are being more designed. I work in B&I, and it's fast, high volume, and efficiency, consistency is key. And you don't always see it until someone else steps back and says, here, this is the way it should be.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, that's actually does work. It makes sense. You know, when you look at line flow and all that, and, you know, knock it out of the park.
Yeah.
Just knock it out of the park. So
great answer. Thank you, Matt. In fact, this is something, Gene, segues very nicely into my next question, because you wrote an article about this for FCSI.org. You were talking about changing menus, but also how consultants bridge that kind of that concept between the ideal and the operational. And it starts with a plate of food, right? So from your point of view, why is it imperative to have consultants involved in that menu planning aspect, as Joe was saying?
Well, let's take the menus have changed for as an example,
Yeah.
right? So this was started out where 10 years ago, and you have, first of all, what we feed ourselves, what we feed our kids, impacts the health of people and of the environment and of the world we live in. So this was a group of people that wanted to change the plate of food, to put healthier options out there that were easily accessible and that people would choose over the non-healthy options. And they felt that if they got chefs involved, and the chefs could get on board and the chefs could have influence on it, then that would really start the process. Well, through these conferences, they have, again, food scientists, dietitians, educator, agricultural scientists, even students all together talking about how do we change the menu? How do we change the servery so that items are placed in a way that people would be more likely to take the healthy items, right? And I think there's a big part of people going out, you know, to dinner nowadays that want that as an option.
Yes.
And so without having consultants there, consultants are oftentimes, they're going to manufacturer events, they're going to trade shows, they're working on projects all over the world. They have information about new products that the general population or even the operators don't have yet. And so they can influence, you know, what innovation's out there that will help you cook quicker. If you're going to have more plant-based products than animal protein-based products, how does that change the layout of your kitchen? How does that change the layout of your serving? They need to be a part of that from the very beginning, and I think it benefits both parties.
Absolutely. Joe, what's your view on that? And also, as a secondary question, why do events like this, Paella and Paella, why is it so good to get that kind of collaborative relationship going between operators, between equipment manufacturers and consultants? What's the value in that?
That's a fun question too. I think to answer the first part of it and to kind of echo on what Gene's saying, a true consultant, when you think about what that word means, that means that I've done something in my career that's given me some understanding of what you're trying to do. I've done something in my career that I understand what you're trying to do, right? We all have a shared vision, and a consultant is meant to be the collaboration between all of that. Right? We still need a dealer and an installer. We still need technicians. We still need culinarians and frontline folks, cashiers, POS systems. We still need back of house equipment. We need all of it. So we become the collaborator of that. These events, then to get into the second piece, very few events today are engineered, and I joke about this, but I've engineered this event specifically to bring people together that would not normally be in the same room.
Yeah.
And we had the first example of that last year during our grand opening. I think we're going to have that this week. And there's a moment where, how many events can you guys name where we've had operators, consultants, leadership and executives, manufacturers, dealers, consultants, dealer designers, I probably already said operator, but you get my point, like from all of these different segments of the industry in the same room at the same time. And it's not just the 5 families. It's not just the associations. It's bigger than that. And so if we can think of ways to get more of that type of a collaborative event, as opposed to 60,000 people hitting a trade show floor on a large convention, or even, you know, some of the bigger national shows that are just trying to sell food and equipment. That's all they're doing. Remember, an independent consultant means we do not sell food or make money from food, and we do not sell equipment or make money from equipment. Period, mic drop, end of sentence. So if that's what we're doing, then the reality is we have this really interesting sort of view of things, but then it's kind of on us to then bring all of those players together, and that's what we're trying to do. And so I would love for people to see what we're doing, think about why we're doing it, and then do more of these. I mean, I would love to see 20 events like this year. I would send my team to those events over large, I will not name them, but large trade shows and events. I would send my folks to those 100 times over compared to some of the big events.
And some lovely work being done for the FCSI Educational Foundation and Life's Kitchen as well. Yeah, to be applauded. I guess a final couple of questions then for you all to answer if possible. Gene mentioned that change is inevitable in this industry. It always has been, always will be. But why is change also quite good for this industry and not to be feared? Gene, let's start with you first, please.
Well, it spurs innovation. I mean, if you look at this industry, we are engineers, chefs, consultants, artists, business people, entrepreneurs. With all of that knowledge, there's nothing that we can't overcome and innovate on.
Superb answer, Gene. Thank you. Matt?
Change is healthy, right? Change is a great thing. Otherwise, nothing ever evolves. Stays stale,
Yep.
bland, you know, and you go nowhere.
Excellent. Joe?
You put a puddle of water somewhere, it eventually stinks, right? Stagnant water stinks. That's just what it is. I think the other part of this is that our society technology is coming so fast, right? That generations are actually shrinking in depth of years, right? It used to be a generation was considered to be 15 to 20 years. Now you can almost name generations in 5-year chunks, right? Because of technology. Technology has driven that. And so the change is not only inevitable, I'm going to echo on something Gene said earlier. Pre-COVID, for the first time in world history, food service had overtaken grocery in the gross domestic product by 1 point. Yeah. So at 51%. For the first time ever. During COVID, we fell back into the 20% range. We're now starting back. I believe this year it's estimated to be about 46, 47% of the GDP is going to be food service again. My gut tells me in the next 2 years, 3 years, we're back to where we were pre-COVID. That's huge. Yeah. And that's with, you know, Matt's and B&I. B&I's return to office is still only 3 days a week on average. We think in 2026 it's going to go to 4 days a week. Yeah. So those changes are outside of all of our influence, right? Yep. That's societal changes. Our role, what are the 3 most always permanent ways to create work? Deal with babies that are being born, deal with food, or deal with people that are dying. Those are your 3 options for stability. We've chosen food.
It's a good choice. A final question, nice short, sharp answers for this one, please. We'll just go through the 3 of you. What does the kitchen of the future ultimately look like, and how differently will it be operated, Joe?
Robots with chefs figuring out, so robots doing mundane and autonomous and repetitive tasks, and true culinarians and chefs driving the menu.
Great answer. Matt?
I see exactly what Joe's saying. It's going to be push button and play. I really truly see push button and play. That's it.
Fantastic. G?
Yeah, I think in the short term, it'll be the continuation of shrinking of the hood, of the food service hood, advancement of today's ventless technologies, improving them even more. Yes. Again, I said the digitization of food, allowing us to put product in and the product automatically knows what to do, or even being able to use AI based on all of that information and run a cooking program without actually using food to get potential results.
Superb answer. Thank you, Gene. Well, I'd just like to wrap things up there and say thank you so much to our experts today. Fantastic insight. I'd like to really thank Unox for supporting this episode. Thank you to Gene. Thank you to Matt. Thank you to Joe. Thank you for watching.